Hello, welcome to Win Some Lose More. My name is Dieter Loosemore, and I'm joined again by my brother Rick to give you the final installment, the final countdown of the top 50 that we've been doing of our favorite games of all time. It changes every year. We did it last year. Hopefully you saw those. We've pared it down to the top 50. So if you've been following along, this is the final one. This is number 10 to number 1. These are the best games objectively, nobody can argue, and yet somehow we'll have different games because he's wrong. Outrageous. We've tried to be a bit swifter than we were last year. This one might be a little bit longer for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we're going to be a touch more effusive because these are the best. A touch. Secondly, and what we did last year, I have a stack next to me, and I know Rick does too, of boxes or box lids, so we get to show you a little bit about it. It's not just going to be the pictures on screen. We're going to show you some stuff as well, so it might take a little bit longer, but that's enough. Stop chatting.
You've got a little bit of a spoiler, I was going to say, though, because I can see lots of box lids behind you, so it's none of them.
I've been clever, actually, and put the insides of boxes back on the shelf so you can't tell what I've taken.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I thought about this. I
was looking at one of them. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, anyway, number 10, Rick.
Number 10. You've already mentioned, and it is. There's going to be a lot of reaching in this video. Downforce.
Number 10.
Downforce. Yes.
Wow.
Up from, I believe, 14. I should probably get my list up in just a minute. Up from 14 last year. And this, if you remember the end of last video, Root didn't make the 10. Mm-hmm. And I looked at Downforce. I was like, how did you get there? How did you beat out Root? Some of it just has playtime. I just have played a lot of Downforce. I now have all 3 of the maps, the base one and then each one, but they're all double-sided, so there's loads of options there. I've got 8 extra powers. 6 came with the first expansion, 2 came with the second one, and then each one adds some sort of novelty, whether it's a loop-the-loop or a ramp or something. This is a racing game and a gambling game, and it's just amazingly fun. And we have both said going into playing Downforce, they're like, it can't be that good, and it's really, really fun. And I think if I look at the rest of these, it doesn't have quite the intricacy of design that's going to come up in some of these. Maybe the next one being a slight, not quite true. But for fun factor, I have played this with everyone who's come around. I'm like, oh, should we play this? And it plays well at 2 players. It plays well at 3 players. It plays well at 6 players. And 4 and 5, they're pretty darn good too. Yeah. It's just it just always comes off the shelf, and it's not complicated to play. You said we played this with our niece who's 8, 9, and she beat you, and I've played it with my in-laws, and I can't remember who won. They just didn't want me or my wife to win, and so they ganged up on us and beat us, but they just had a really good time. And it's restoration game, so the pieces are really nice. It's a really good game, and I'm a little bit surprised it's in my top 10. But it gets a lot of playtime, so you can't argue with that.
To complete the triple crossover, I will say that I spoke to our other brother today, invited him to do this with us. Unfortunately, he wasn't available. But Downforce was one of the ones that came up. That was one of the ones that he was thinking of as we were talking through what might have been on the list. Downforce is one of the ones. So all 3 of us, amazing game, fully support it. It is wonderful. So my number 10, you've mentioned before, and now I feel like I need to do more thinking. Which way up is it? There it is.
Oh.
This has been in my top 10 for a long time. It was 9 last year. It's 10 now. I'm interested by the things that you've said. I don't know that I'd see the same things. And because it's fantasy, I can abstract it further than other people, whether that be a good or bad thing. So for me right now, I see it so mechanically, where obviously you can't just swamp the map, so you have to have a barrier of entry, blah, blah, blah. So I see it mechanically, but I take your point, and so there's extra work to be done here. But it's just hilarious fun once you're into the game and you've got the various powers and the fantasy races all mixed together. I love the rat men that just swarm the map, or the
Mhm.
tridents who love being by water, and all these different things. And humans are hilariously dull. Like it just all works.
They're good at farming.
They're good at farming, because aren't they just?
Yeah.
Like that's all they're good for. Dwarves in their mountains, the hobbits in their hobbit holes and whatnot. It's just all funny. Somebody that does love fantasy, it's poking fun at the things that I love in a very good way. For somebody that doesn't like it, it's poking fun of it and not taking itself seriously, so it's more inviting. It just works. It broadens out the thing, and it's a combat area control game that I enjoy. And usually they're dry and dull, but this is hilarious. It just works for me. And Days of Wonder, so great production, beautiful insert. Small World still in my top 10 at number 10.
Number 9, and it's climbed one place, is Captain Sonar.
Dream.
And I think I said in the last video when it came up with you,
19,
if we'd recorded this a month ago, this would have been in the teens, maybe even the 20s, because I hadn't played it for ages.
Sure.
COVID being a major issue in that, but also 6 to 8 people to play a game that requires a certain level of bravado, that requires a certain level of tacticalness. So it's a really niche game.
Sure.
But I did play it the other week, and we played it twice in a row. I think that's the first time that's ever happened, because normally people get to the end of this game, which is real-time battleships, team of 3 or team of 4 versus another team of 3 and team of 4, trying to find each other and blow each other up. Everyone's shouting directions, and the engine's broken, and you're trying to fire torpedoes, but it's stuck in the machine, and then you surface, and you're frantically trying to draw while you repair the boat, and everyone else is plowing after you. It's stressful, it's hairy, and you get to the end of a game and go, oh, that was amazing, but I can't do it ever again. No, these people, this group, my friend Katie was up and her sisters were visiting, and they said, oh, can we play that again? Yes, we'll play one of the other maps. I don't think I've ever played any of the other maps. I've got an expansion with extra maps, but I never get round to it, because normally we play one game and everyone is exhausted, but gloriously exhausted, because I think I said it last year, it's still true. It's the most fun you can have with a dry white marker.
It is.
It's great. Facts.
My number 9 has slipped. I said this last year, I think, when it's a former number 1. This is the lowest number 1 I have in my list. It was number 2 for a long time. It tripped up into number 1 for a little bit. Last year it was number 4. And I don't have a good box to show you, because I rebox everything. Yeah. This is Keyforge at number 9. It slipped for a couple of reasons. I'll tell you first. It's a 2-player only head-to-head card dueling game. You'll have heard me say that several times on these lists. It's one of the things I grew up with. It's a style of gaming that just suits me. And every deck is unique. They've programmed these crazy algorithms with all the possible cards that exist, all the possible suits and monsters and traps and whatever artifacts and whatnot that exist, and the computer just figures out, here's a brand new list of cards that's 36, 12 from 3 of the, I think now 10 different factions. I might be wrong on that, because it keeps growing.
More than that, yeah.
And I love it, because it's a resource game, not the combat game it looks like. And I love that little twist. It's not just a Magic the Gathering again. It's not just a Pokemon Yu-Gi-Oh again. It's a Euro game packaged up in a card playing duel. Because you're gathering resources, and it's not. I know it's not.
Yeah, because I would want to play that, and I just looked 134 for me. It's not. Yeah. Like I would play it, but it's not a resource Euro game. Don't pretend.
Sure. But it is it's the race to the resources that wins you the game.
Yeah, I understand.
You forge keys. Now, that sounds like my perfect game, and in many ways it is. It has come down for 2 reasons. One, they're keeping up with it, which means I can't. They're taking a hiatus. They're taking a hiatus right now, which I'm so pleased with because I'm finally getting the set that came out like a year ago.
Yeah.
And I can't keep up with it. They're coming out with new ideas so quickly. Every 6 months to begin with, there was a new set, and that was great when pre-COVID, when I was just around loads of people to just try these things out with. But now with fewer people willing to sit down and try it out, the meta is less exciting than it was.
Yeah, sure.
And so then that's then the second reason. Not that I'm not just playing it less, but I'm not thinking about it as much. It sits on my shelf. Every so often I'll pull it off and just sit and play myself, just to try a couple of combinations, because this unique deck thing, like we were saying with Imperial Settlers, kind of goes for and against it. For me, it's exciting to find out how these two decks sit against each other, but also introducing somebody new. I need to know all of my decks to know which one to give them, to know which one to use myself. That's going to be not too many mechanisms, but enough to be engaging, but it makes it even, but I'm definitely going to win because I've done it before. Like, how do I balance that stuff? And so it kind of swings both ways. I still love it, and I have just spent more money on it, but
of course,
it's down to number 9 of all time. It's amazing, but it slipped a little bit. A little bit, but love it. Keyforge, number 9.
Fair enough. My number 8 has also slipped. This was number 5 last year, and there's a very good reason for that, which I'll come to later. But this, I know you'll turn your nose up at, is Power Grid.
I can't. I would like to, but I can't.
Why not?
For all the things we've said before, even in my disappointing video I did about it, it was an unfair first experience, and I have an equally classic feeling game on my list that kind of cancels out any argument I might have.
That's fair, and it is a classic feeling game. What is it, 2004, 2005 this came out, so in our terms quite old, only 16 years, I understand that. But this is an auction game and a economic game, and you are developing a power grid across either the US or Germany in the base set. I've now got an expansion for the UK and the Scandinavia. But you first bid on a different type of power station, whether that be coal or oil or wind. And then you buy resources to power those power stations, be coal or oil. You don't buy wind, that actually is self-running, and that's a good lesson for us all. And then you expand your network in Germany or the US, and you work in one city or another. But all of this costs you money, and the whole time you're trying to work out, well, how much do I want to spend on the power station? How much do I want to spend on the resources, and how much do I want to spend on my network to make the most money I can? That's all pretty mundane. But I love the arc of the thing, because at the beginning, you've got, I don't know, a rubbishy power station that didn't cost you very much money, but it's good because you don't have much, but that you can use 2 or 3 coal or oil and it will power one city. By the end, you're getting an amazing power station that will cost you quite a lot of money because you've made it, that costs, I don't know, 1 coal or oil to power 3 cities. And you get that really good sense of progression, and there's some really just cheeky little mechanics whereby the market of power stations is always coming up. It's always new, but the highest value ones go to the bottom of the grid, and the really expensive ones go to the bottom of the deck. And then so it means that every time you play, you get this nice swell of progression. As the resources go on, coal and oil becomes more and more scarce because, hey, fossil fuels, guys. And you'll know what becomes more powerful? Uranium and recycling suddenly become more powerful. They're really expensive at the beginning, and you get this, there's just so many. I love games that are mechanical, but they elicit a response, almost an emotional response, a story response without a single word of text. it's Friedman Friese, a German designer. It's not like, oh, now this happened and there's a story to it. But there's an inherent story because the mechanics are so beautifully matched to the story of the game. And yeah, I don't think I know a game that's quite as good at that as Power Grid. So absolutely love it. I also love economic games, and that's something I didn't know about myself until this other game comes up later. And you're like, of course you like it. You like it. You know what? Do I like economic games? Oh yeah, I do. I didn't realize that about myself, but thank you for teaching that about me. Very good. Number 8, Power Grid.
I panicked as you started talking about this, going, he hasn't mentioned another game that I was sure he would talk about, and then I realized we're in the top 10. It's definitely going to be in your top 10.
This is why Power Grid's slightly lower.
Yes. My number 8, you very rudely assumed was in the list below. The Utter Dream, The Crew.
Oh, hang on, where did this end up for me? You talk.
Now, yeah. This is a cooperative trick-taking game which shouldn't work, except it does. 55. I'm impressed, genuinely, because this is not everybody's cup of tea, and I will take that for this. You either need to like classic card games or hidden information. There's just certain things that would put people off that I think if you can overcome, or you genuinely like I do, this is a beauty. For a £10 game, this is a dream. There are 50 different modes of play. Technically, it's a story. You can work your way through. It's just different missions, different rule sets to kind of play with to see if you can achieve. And if you need to get the right person to take the right card at the right time, but that doesn't have to be the winning card, just the card that they win. The reason it's still here, this and the next one I'll talk about are here because they're the small kinds of games that I've been able to take to people, even in the time where we haven't had lots of contact. These are the ones that I've been able to just stuff in my bag and take. Fuse before, but these are just that little bit calmer, a little bit easier, more accessible kind of thing. So this and the next one are this high. We'll see where they are in a couple of years, but for that reason, I love them. They're great games, but particularly at the moment, they're kinds of the games that I can just take everywhere.
All right, my number 7, you're going to get mad. You're going to get so mad because you got mad about it last year, and I absolutely 100% promise that I did not rig this because Seven Wonders Duel ends up at number 7. If you remember, viewers, last year, Seven Wonders for me was 77, and Seven Wonders Duel was number 7.
Where is the bucket?
I actually tried to get this into number 6, but as you'll see, I couldn't do that to number 6 because and Power Grid, should that come up to number 7? He's going to be so mad. Anyway, I don't care. This is the highest 2-player only game that I own, and it is. I said about Lost Cities, if you want to play a game, just get that. I absolutely stand by that because that's so pure. But the richness of play that happens in Seven Wonders Duel, I love the fact that there are 3 possible ways for the game to end. There's a military track, and it's a bit of a push me pull you, and first time we played I beat you that way, but most of the time it's just an arms race, and it forces people to draft cards they don't want. Dee talked about this before, but effectively it's a drafting game, but instead of picking it around and passing, which you normally do in a bigger group because there's just the 2 of you, because it's a dual version, it's on the table, and so you draw from there. But you say, oh, there's an army thing coming up, so I'm going to take an army one. Forces you to take that army one, so you leave the other thing that I actually really want there. And so it's all that sort of forward planning. You can also win by collecting, set collecting science. I've never seen it happen, but again, kind of an arms racy thing. But most of the time you'll win by points. I just love this game, and I think the theme's a bit meh. I think the production is fine. I just love this game. I could sit down and say, hey, Cheryl, can we just, fancy this for 20 minutes? She goes, yeah, okay, we can bosh through that. And we both feel like we've had a really engaging but fun time. And yeah, it's pretty special. I think it's really good. Seven Wonders Duel at number 7.
It does feel fuller than the time it takes would suggest. Yes. I'll definitely go with that. Now, my number 7. Last year, I shocked myself with how high it was, and that was number 15. This year, it's number 7, and
I thought it wasn't going to turn up.
It's number 7.
You were like,
23. And I distinctly, you were going, how can this be as high as 23? And I was like, wait for it, because I've got it at number 7. This game is perfection. There is nothing wrong with this game except that it's a minimum 3-player game. Like, it's not the best game. It's not the best design. It's not the most robust thing, but there's nothing wrong with it. Literally nothing wrong with it. It's so simple. And when I was playing with some friends just before I moved up, some old friends from university and some of their friends, I just taught them this. And again, 2 turns in, they were like, oh, that's all this is. Like, yep. And then you learn about consecutive numbers, shrinking your score. Oh, now there's like potential for strategy in this very light, silly game. And then you get to the end of it and you rue everybody else's result. And then you're like, let's do it again, quick. I need to be better. So good. There's just nothing wrong. It's number 7. Again,
do you know
accessibility, when I've been able to be around 3 or 4 people, 10 minutes, let's just pull it out. It's just easy to have fun with.
Now, do you know where this should have landed for you? You think about the German, because it's Thorsten Gimmler.
Oh.
Yeah, no. 9 Danke should have been number 9.
I see. Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, okay. Now for the reason why 7 Wonders couldn't go up into number 6, falling 3 places to number 6 is Wingspan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I was about to say it's better than 7 Wonders Duel, but I had it the other way around. Never mind.
I think it's better than 7 Wonders Duel.
Clearly.
Obviously, because I really like it, and it was number 3 last year. It faded a little bit for me with the Oceania expansion, not because I don't think it's a good expansion, but because it sort of took it to a level of complexity that I didn't want that game to be in.
Sure.
Because it's so gorgeous, because the theme is so grabbable. And when I say theme, I don't mean, again, story, because it doesn't have one. Hey, you're trying to get birds by laying eggs on one type of bird and hatching another type. That doesn't make any sense. Theme as in oh, how do I get this bird? I'll hunt some bugs and throw them in the air and see if this bird turns up in my area. Doesn't make any sense. Theme, though, is beautiful. There are so many beautiful birds, beautifully painted with little facts and what that bird does. This is an engine builder. Every card does a different thing. And I'd probably say there's 70% of the birds cards in the game. And I have 200 cards or something like that. It's a very large number. About 70% of them, their action relates quite neatly with their bird character, if you like. There are loads of different ways to win, and this is actually a much meatier game than it looks like it should be. And I've taught loads of people this, and people who, some are gamers, some are who are just like, oh, that looks pretty, I'll play that. And then, some people were staying with us the other day, and they woke up the next morning, was like, do you know? I was like, how did you sleep? She was like, do you know? I just spent the whole night thinking how I could have done that better. Wow. To have a game that's that mechanically rich and thought-provoking, and yes, it's a bit random at times, but for everyone, I love that, which is why Oceania, I was like, I don't need it to be quite as complex as that. I just need to scale it back. So I got rid of that pretty quickly, actually. And it has fallen for me, maybe a slight overplay, but really because the 5 above it, again, that whole question of, do I want to play this first thing tomorrow morning? Yes, to every single one of my top 5. Maybe I'll wait to the afternoon for Wingspan, because I still really like it. And I just love the position it has in my collection, and 1 million people's collection now. It's sold 1 million copies now, officially.
Wow.
Yeah, it does something really special. Number 6, Wingspan.
It does. Now, my number 6 is the one I've cheated. What did you look at my shelf and think was missing, or that should have been missing?
Well, I was joking mostly about the side ones, but I think I can see a Targi box that doesn't have its box on.
There you go, because it should have the little face at the top, but it doesn't.
Well, no, it's more that I just knew it was going to turn up.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this was number 10 last time. Number 4, just in the shake-up, is within the 10. Say, there's my top 15 could be anywhere at any given moment, really.
Yeah.
This just comes up a bit, just just because I absolutely love it. I love the axes system, whatever it is, placing workers on the outside and getting the intersecting action as well.
Yes,
it's just
great.
really clean. This was on Board Game Arena quite early in the when everybody was having to play games online, so I got a few games in that way. I've got the expansion, which just, if you want to, just guts the game and gives you a whole new set of cards, one extra mechanic, so it's not like a whole new game to learn. It's just variety and just works really well for me.
Sure.
2-player only, I think, looking at my list. No, I've got one more 2-player only game, but this is one of the best. And yes, it's dry as anything and visually okay.
Yeah.
But this was the one that I said when we were talking about potentially Seven Wonders Duel, and we said, if you've got £15, don't buy the expansion for Seven Wonders Duel.
Sure, yeah,
and I said, buy another game, it's this one. If you've got 15 quid, when it's in print, £15 for so much richness and depth. You want a full game in a tiny box. This is still an hour-long game. It's still a meaty game. But so much value for what you get in there. Lovely, just works well for me. Targi
58 for me, which is interesting because with the crew at 55, that at 58, Time of the Builder at 51, almost like my 50 to 60 is games Deet likes, and I'd quite happily play with it.
Games in small boxes Deet likes.
Correct. Yes, very much the case. Okay. Okay, my number 5. I'll talk about later.
Okay. My number 5 is my favorite 2-player only game. Okay. It's been in my top 10 ever since I played it. Since I played it physically. Onitama is the best replacement for chess you will ever come across, in my opinion. Sure. If you love chess, great, do that. But for somebody who struggles to have memorized thousands of potential moves and all that things, this has five moves. Wow. 16 in the whole game, but per game that you sit down to, 5 will appear, and you have control of 2 of them until you use one, and then you have to give it to your opponent, and then you gain the one that's off to the side, and then they have to use one of their 2, which now becomes available to you. And so there's now this cycle going round of not just what move is best for me, but which of these 2 moves can I use that doesn't give the opponent an advantage when they get to use it. This is a beautiful production. It's a neoprene mat. The pieces are big and chunky. Initially played it digitally, but as soon as I played it physically, the experience matters. Tactility, as we've spoken about before, matters. Beautiful games are more fun to play. True. And it just works for me. It's great for camping. It's great for kids. It's great for adults. It just works in kind of every setting I've been in. I can just roll this out, set it up, explain it in 30 seconds, and we're having fun. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Okay, number 4 is a new entry.
It's at number 4.
It's number 4.
The longest game on your list.
War of the Ring.
What a beast.
What a beast. And yeah, a little bit surprised to see it this high. So if you don't know War of the Ring, and again, another comparatively old game, 2003, I think, the first edition. This is the second edition, 2012. Yeah. And it's basically the Lord of the Rings, and takes nearly as long to play as it does to read. It is nominally a 2 to 4 player game, but really is a 2-player game. I think a bit like Dee was talking about Memoir 44 before. This is a war game, obviously, where one person takes each side. So you've got the Free Peoples of Middle-earth, and you've got Sauron's forces. By the way, if you don't know Lord of the Rings at this point, you might want to fast forward. You've got those 2. You can play in pairs, so you've got Mordor and you've got the Uruk-hai, and they're doing different things, but they're fighting together. And I've never tried it. I'd quite like to try it. I've got to find 3 other people who want to sit down for the best part of 4 hours and play through the most complicated game I think I own. But I love it. We played it once, and it probably landed in my 20s, I think, in the working document. I was probably around there. And then I played it again, and slowly drifted up, and then I haven't played it for about 4 months probably, and it just keeps going up in my mind because I really want to play it right now. Forget tomorrow. I want to play it right now. It's not really card driven, but there are great cards in it. Each turn you take 2 cards, a character one and an event one. But then you roll some dice. Both sides roll some dice. Now the bad guys, who you played as Mordor, they have more dice. Not more dice, not more door. And the free pupils have fewer dice because they're caught napping. They're not really ready for war. And with those dice, then you choose action selection. Do I want to use this one to play a card? Do I want to use this one to move my armies? Do I want to use this one to awaken a different race to the fact that there is a war going on? Do I want to use it to move my fellowship? Now each card has two uses. You can use it for its sort of what I like to call chance card effect, just story effect, or you can use it in battle. And so you might use one, hey, it's the File of Galadriel, which stops you getting corrupted because, you don't get scared in the dark with Shelob or whatever it is, something like that. Or I don't know, as an example for the bad guys, you bring one of the Nazguls into play and he's pretty scary or something, because you can bring in extra people into fight. We played this and you had come in to attack Lothlorien, and you had battered me, and I looked at my cards. I didn't even realize what they did. I'd sort of just had them in hand, and this was the last one I could play, and it was the Sword of Westerness, and it said play for hobbits in battle, and I'll flip Pippins in the battle. Great. So throw it down, and it says, do your normal fights, but at the end of the fight or before the fight or something, if there's a Nazgul in the fight, which is what you had, roll this dice, and if you get the right number, you beat that Nazgul. I think maybe it must have been Merry, because Merry was in the fight. We rolled the dice. You had the Lord of the Nazgul, the Witch King of Angmar, and I won it, and I knocked him out. And then I won the fight. And I know it was in Lorien, because this is sort of like a what could have been in the story rather than a what happens in the story, because otherwise it would be too restrictive. But basically, that's what happens in the story. And you just, as a Tolkien nerd, I mean, I've read all of Tolkien this year. As a Tolkien nerd, is just a weepable joy to be able to play this out. I love it. Oh, I'm such a geek. I know. Number 4. And by the way, I know that my list is starting to look like the BGG top 10, but there's a reason for that. These are really good games. Number 4 is War of the Ring.
Wow. An epic in its own right. My number 4 is Concordia.
You're trying to explain it any shorter than that.
I daren't. I'm moving swiftly on. I had all comments to make, but I just will not. It's great. It really is. Yeah. The one thing I will say before Concordia, I agree. When I played it, the only time I played it, it came in my 80s. In the 4 months since, it's now in my 60s. It just gets in your brain. Concordia stays in my brain forever.
Yes.
This is my classic game. It feels old, but in a good, rich way. And it's not that old. It's still got quite modern sensibilities, and there's the actions are taken by cards. You're not just moving around the board. You have to play the right card at the right time, and it has a similar Century Spice Road feel of you can then pick up all your cards as one of your actions by playing one of the cards which gains you money, and then there's a card row to buy from. But all the while, you're basically spreading your colonists over the Roman Empire. You are a faction of the Roman Empire, essentially, fighting for territory and production of places. And it just works really well. It's just that really simple thing. This is one of the ones that if people like what we call Euro games, very mechanically driven, very points driven type games, and they've played old classic games before, I'll just introduce them to this. This is just a really nice step into modern gaming. I'll even play it at 5 when it takes 3 hours. Like it's just generally quite engaging. Turns are so fast typically that even downtime is limited. It just works really well. It was my number 5 last time. It's just always in the mix for me in my top 10. It's just how it works out. It's my favorite, like pure classic Euro game by a mile. Concordia, number 4.
Okay, number 3 is another new entry. thought you'd forgotten.
I'd forgotten it was new. This was the one I thought he hasn't mentioned it yet. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. This is the one that dropped Power Grid down, because it is another, my friends, economic game. And actually, to be honest, I did think, oh, do I need 2 major economic games in my list? Yeah, I think so. Because turns out I really like them. Brass Birmingham is a redo, not really a reskin, but a redo of an older game called Brass from Martin Wallace from about 2005, which was uglier than Concordia. That's how ugly it was. And then Roxley Games got a hold of it and just revamped it and called it Brass Lancashire, because it was based in Lancashire about the cotton trade. But at the same time, they then did a slight redesign and a refocus on a game called Brass Birmingham. Took a lot of the same mechanics, but sort of changed some of the resources and some of the way that played out. And I love it. And I've been trying to find ways to explain why I like this so much. And the one of the major things is that I don't know of another game where you have to work together in opposition. And let me explain what I mean by that.
Sure.
When you see what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to, you build, I don't know, steel mills and coal mills, coal mines and stuff like that, because that gets you points. But also you need that because a coal mine will enable you to build trains later on, because they run on coal. And in fact, the steel mill runs on coal and the pottery runs on coal. And so you need coal to get going. You also need steel to build these buildings. And so it's fairly standard, Euro fare in that regard. The fact that it's in the Midlands, I'm on board with. I lived in Nottingham, and so I quite like the fact that it's all that area that I know. But if your coal or your iron is on the board, and there are some connectivity rules, but if Deet's connected to my coal, he can use that coal. And so I've made coal, but he gets to use it. That doesn't seem fair, except that when all of that coal is depleted from that coal mine, the whole thing flips over, the little tile flips over, and I get points, and I then get income. So actually, even though Deet hasn't paid me any cash, money, he has enabled me to become more economically viable because he used my coal mine. Now there's a market, he can buy it off the board, but the rules say if you are able to take it from the board, you have to. And so you suddenly have this interplay of like, well, I want to build this so that I know, because I know you have to take it. And the whole thing, then, you remember I talked to Power Grid, you get that sense of progression. You get a sense of progression because everything becomes more powerful and the whole world becomes industrialized at the same time. This is set in the Industrial Revolution. You have a canal era and a railway era. And I looked at some of those fiddly bits, canal era, and then everything goes off the board, and then you got a railway era. I was like, this is going to be a bit clunky and a bit messy, but it's not. It's elegant, and it's thinky, and it's interrelated. There's not player interaction like I take your thing or I hurt you in this way, but there's player interrelation, which I've just never seen anything like it. And so it just ticks all my boxes. The deluxe version, which I have, it's got some really nice pieces in it. It's all just cardboard and wood. And you've heard I've said it. I like that stuff. The what they called iron clays, the poker chips for the currency. That's a little bit special, but generally it's just cardboard and wood. That's how I like my games. Like a bit sort of not rough and ready, but just tactile. Simple and yeah.
My number three has had a terrible fall. It came into my list last year at number 2, and it's dropped all the way to number 3.
Wow.
The best Garfield game. My top 3 are my 3 favorite publishers, but this is Paladins of the West Kingdom from Garfield Games. Architects isn't on my list.
No, I noticed.
I tend to play smaller groups than you, and that kind of needs bigger groups for it to work. This we spoke about before is perfect at 2 or 3, and is my favorite multiplayer game to play solo.
Sure.
Despite how dense it is, despite how complex this is, and despite the depth and how much, really, what we both complain about with solo modes is the amount you have to do for the opposition.
Yes.
You have to do quite a lot for this one.
Wow.
But I still love it. I think the very first time, it took me 2 hours to play through a solo game. and I immediately did it again. I just love the puzzle in this game. Yes, you were speaking before where it's just red, blue, and black. They don't mean anything, except the more you look at it, the more you think about it. Yes. If you are trying to find theme, what those actions are that turn one thing into another make complete sense with what those things are. And we saw some kind of design notes that they'd made on how these things interplay, and it just makes complete sense. It is so delicately placed together. And if you do something wrong, you are completely screwed, except you're not. You can probably make that work. Just don't pivot too hard too late. Like there's it's a deep Euro game. So if you make mistakes, you'll lose. That's the nature of these games, but so engaging and surprisingly easy to teach for how deep the game is. And yes, you were talking about the 3 cards. That's an amazing mechanism. My personal favorite thing is the different colored meeples, as we've spoken about in others of his games, just that they are suited to different types of things. Again, they have titles, but who cares?
Well, again, but you say that, you look in the design notes and you go, of course he's a hunter because he's green. He's like Robin Hood. That makes sense.
Yes.
But you don't think about it when you teach the game, when you learn the games like purple, green, black, you know.
But the self-enclosed economies just work really well together. You can, there's like at least 3 really viable routes to victory, arguably 6, but I think 3. And it's just wonderful. It's so good. And a relatively small box for, again, how much game you get. It's full as anything. It's the fullest box I own. But so good, so worth it. I get people will have different preferences, but I've never heard anyone say this is a bad game ever, because it's just not. It's impeccably designed, in my opinion. Paladins of the West Kingdom, number 3.
Great game. Great game. My number 2, there's no box because I don't have it anymore, because it's Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Because once you played it, you don't need to keep it anymore. And I think I traded it as a big box for Pandemic base game on a maths trade. Someone agreed to that. That's fine. Pandemic Legacy, if you don't know, Pandemic, great cooperative game. And you say I like cooperatives, and it's obviously this is number 2, but I don't have anything that's not Matt Leacock cooperative on here actually. So I don't love them, but I love this because of the story, because of the way it carried you through. You play 12 months, which 12 games, but you get a do-over if you lose the first time through on that month. So on average, you'll probably play about 18 games. And this was legacy games. There's quite a few of them now, but this was one of the very early ones. And the fact that you got to write on cards and name people and give them scars if they got into trouble, or give them powers if they did well, or rip up cards altogether. You're playing, oh my goodness, it's almost stressful to say, but it's so cathartic and it's so visceral, and I'm actually making a huge difference to how this game is going to play in the future. Because month to month to month to month to month, bad things happen, rules change, and it just gets really stressful. And there are moments when I talk to people who've played this game and I say, how was May? How was September? And they go, oh no. Oh dear, that thing. Yeah, no, I know that thing. Oh, but then they came. Yes, I know they came. And there are some, I did toy with this drifting down the list ever so slightly. You talk about playtime, and can I play this again? But it's still, and I say this advisedly because it's not number 1 and it's held at number 2, the most fun gaming experience me and my wife have ever had. It's her number 1. And I'm not sure anything's ever going to top those May, those September, those moments where you go, wow. Yeah, something really special. Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
So now, Rick, tell me about your number 5, because it is my number 2.
Is it number 2? Oh,
no longer number 1. Dethroned it has become. Scythe from Stonemaier Games, Jamie Stegmaier, the game that got me into even medium games, let alone medium heavy. Star Realms got me into games in terms of collection, but Scythe is the game that cemented that and produced the many shelves I now have behind me. Tell me why you don't like Mondays.
Well, I mean, this has climbed from 6 to 5 and has climbed and climbed and climbed. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I can't believe it's gone ahead of Wingspan, if I'm honest. I played with you this the first time, and I remember there was when we both started looking at some heavier stuff at the similar sorts of times, and we had the sort of VHS Betamax argument of like, do you go Terraform Mars, do you go Scythe, ooh, which engine build do you want? I don't care, get both of them, they're good. And it doesn't necessarily fit my boxes. The art is sort of, what have I called this before? Moody European. Give me Carl Ferret. Is full of plastic minis, which kind of have to be painted to look good, and I'm never going to do that. It looks a bit like a war game, and it's a bit not really my thing. But I played it with you. It was okay. And I played it with some friends at a board game cafe, and I liked it a bit more. And I just kept liking it and going, there's a lot to really, really like about this. And you know what we haven't talked about with Tapestry or Great Western Trail or anything is the real joy of this game. And I taught this and played it on Saturday night. It's like, you can do this action, you can do this action, you can do this action. This action is called upgrade. And what it means is you take a cube from the top of your board and put it in the bottom of your board. And what this does, ladies and gentlemen, is the best thing about the whole game. And they went, why would that be the best thing about the whole? It's moving a cube. The best thing about the whole game is that you make one action more powerful and you make another action cheaper in one fell swoop. And I've talked a lot in this top 10 about progression. Scythe has progression. It also has, for all its moody Europeanness, character and story and asymmetry that tells that story, a bit like Power Grid, that elegance to say, we don't need to give you all the story, it's telling itself. Cheryl and I have also played through Rise of Fenris, and I know some people are like, this is the best thing ever. We didn't love Rise of Fenris. It was good, it was okay. It's not the best campaign, it's not the best legacy game we've played, but that is still then seen the rise of Scythe to number 5 for me, because it plays really well and it's really interesting and it's really fun, and it's I'm wrong. I hold up my hands. I'm a big ugly man, and I can say I was wrong about Scythe, and it is one of my top 5 games of all time, and I've got every expansion.
It has spent an entirety of 3 months since I've owned it not being my number 1.
Wow. 2
of them when Keyforge took over for a little bit, and then just now where it's been displaced for number 2. It's got huge sentimental value for me, as I said, with the impact it's had on me in gaming. I love playing it, just full stop. Even when I've played unwieldy 5-6 player games that last a long time, invariably there's a story of a moment that happened that was just not necessarily pivotal to the outcome of the game. We just were like, oh, that thing happened, or somebody sneakily working away at the thing, and everyone goes, wait, the Nords have been quiet for a while, we need to go do something about that. Okay, everybody rushes over while somebody's just sat there on the factory being like, fine, go rush over. I'm going to just guard here for a while.
We had that on Saturday night. We all knew the last turn was coming, and so all it took was someone to go into the factory, concrete, and take it over. And Cheryl had been sat on the factory as the whoever the Japanese faction is, and had set a trap, and this person walked in and lost 3 power, and we all suddenly went, oh, it might not be the last round of the game. I should have done some other stuff. It turned out it was, and we were all fine. But just that moment.
And it's an engine to provide lots of those things. I've got boxes behind me because I own nearly everything that exists for this thing. It's one of the few games that I will upgrade to the limit. In fact, I could only show you this because my computer is sat on the rest of it, so I couldn't show you the base box or the full legendary box, because that's what everything is propped up by at the moment. But number 2 for me, number 5 for Rick, undeniably fantastic, Scythe. So good.
Okay, number 1, you talk about having to, or wanting to upgrade everything. This one I kind of have to upgrade everything. Terraforming Mars. And I mentioned it in dispatches just now because, again, you and I, 2016 or whenever these 2 games came out, were like on different sides of the fence. This is much more my theme. It's real world. I don't love space because actually I don't love sci-fi, but I don't mind like real space. And I talked about with underwater cities, you know, the sort of, the realistic possibility that we might have to go and live somewhere else because running out of space on the Earth or whatever. So it's a theme I enjoyed more than Scythe. But it's still a game that I enjoy more than Scythe. Now I say you've got to upgrade it. You have to at least upgrade to the dual layer boards because it's a cube pusher, and the player boards they give you, I use the word board advisedly, is just terrible. So you've got to upgrade there. For Christmas, I have a sneaking suspicion I'm getting the big box with all of the plastic mini tiles as well. So because I will be honest, it's not the most attractive game. I mean, look at this, look at the cover. Okay, not bad.
It's all right.
Good font choice, pretty decent. You open it up, they didn't work hard enough on the presentation. So how is it number 1? Because it has everything that I've said that I love about games in this last 10 lists. It has arc, it has progression. You become more powerful at the stuff that you want to do as you go along. It has different paths to victory. It has the card play. There are so many cards in this, and you know, like Wingspan, like War of the Ring that I've said, they relate to what they're about. And you get that sense of cynicism. No,
synergy.
Cynicism. That's what you have about Terraforming Mars. Synergy. That you go, oh, my actions, but also the story of what I'm doing work together. So there's theme and there's mechanic, and there's just so many cards and so many options to this. This is basically the only game I play one player ever, and I've played it a lot. And it's one of those that's it's been at number 1 for ages. Brute was there for maybe a couple of months, but it quickly got taken back again. And every time we come and do these lists, I go, but it's not that pretty, and it's not maybe quite as clever as that game or as involved in that. It's just so playable, so playable. And you teach people, this is, you wouldn't teach a Wingspan person because that's like, oh, you've never played a game in your life. This one's quite pretty, you'll be fine. But someone who's played a bit of a game, and you go, do you think fancy Terraforming Mars? And a bit like in the same way as I said about Pandemic, you know, it's a real world situation. People go, yeah, I get that. I understand what that's about. People go, oh yeah, it's a bit like The Martian, the Ridley Scott film, or it's a bit like that. I can get hold of that. And then they see the cards. And honestly, I haven't talked much about how the game works. You have loads of cards and you play them and you pay for them and they do special things and they upgrade this cube, which moves that cube and blah, 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 blah. But every time I teach people, they go, they get 10 cards because they're in the beginner mode. And by the way, you can play beginner mode and advanced mode side by side. That's genius. You got 10 cards and they look at them and go, I don't know what to do with any of these cards. Well, that's okay. You've got base actions you can do with it. Just ignore the cards. And then in the next round, you get 4 more cards. You have to choose whether you're going to buy them. And by the third round, they get these more cards. And I think, I can't remember which game you were talking about, but you get to that third round, suddenly you go, oh, I see. And you suddenly look at these 4 cards and go, oh, but I want all of these. Yeah, they're going to cost you money, but I haven't got any money. No, I know. And then you just see people just coming alive to the fact that every single choice is just a world of exploration. And yeah, it's great. And my wife will play it and she hates ugly games, so it must be doing something right. So number 1, still probably for a very long time, Terraforming Mars.
Now my number 1, you talk about choice, you talk about exploration, you talk about story. Oh boy, Vindication. What a in a similar art category to Scythe, maybe, where it suits me. It's a bit grittier,
Moody
bit
off-worlders.
dirty. Yeah, moody, fantasy-esque. You are a scumbag, and you're washed up on this island, and you have to gain honor. And again, there are clear different ways to victory. The game ends differently. I find it really hard to talk about this game because I get just so excited that I forget any logical order to be helpful. I've done other videos on it, so now I'm just going to talk about why it's now number one. And I cannot say with any conviction that this will stay number one. It was number 3 last year, and I think it's a top 5 game for many, many years to come.
Your top 3 have stayed the same, they've just sort of twisted around.
Yes, none of my top 10 is the same, but my top 3 are the same, just different order.
Yep.
Right now, I've played it more recently and more frequently in the last couple of years than I have Scythe. And so I've been thinking about it more. What you were talking about with War of the Ring, with a few of these other games, they just get in your brain and you start to see opportunities open up to you. And I've played this 10, 15 times. It's not like it's a brand new game to me, but I'm still seeing things open up. And that's before any of the expansion material, which is yet to arrive. I've got one of the expansions, which allows me to play solo and adds a couple of things. It's good. It allows me to just keep playing it. But then there's even more content coming in a big box. I get to put everything in. It's the community engagement of this company is incredible. And I know that shouldn't factor into what makes a game. It makes me care about the company more. Similar to Stonemaier, whether you have opinions on Jamie Stegmaier or not, he's in the community. He makes videos.
Matt Leacock plays other people's games. BGG.
Exactly that, as did the designer of Targi for me. Like these things matter. We're in the hobby. I make this stuff for anybody, and very much it's about inviting people to just discover something for the first time. But if you're in the hobby, these things matter. You want to feel a part of it. And Orange Nebula, the people that make it, do an amazing job at that. So not only do I love their product, but if I've got a problem, never mind they're on the other side of the world. They'll respond to me within 12 hours and go, we're really sorry, or thank you so much for this. Here's what we're going to do about it immediately. And you're just like, that's incredible. I love this product even more now, and I'm even prouder to own it. So right now, I love the game, love it dearly. As I say, it'll probably be a top 5 for many, many years to come. Right now, it is my number 1 because I've played it that much more. And your question of what do I want to play tomorrow morning, it's Vindication. It just is. It suits me. I'm a fantasy nerd, more generic than you. I like a broader range of things within the fantasy and kind of sci-fi world. And this just lets me, if I want to go fight monsters this game, I can just go fight monsters this game. If I want to get relics and use crazy powers, I can just go do that. And it's almost sandboxy and lets me just play around with it however I like. And to me, it's beautiful on top. So Vindication, number 1 for now, but top 50, 2021, Terraforming Mars and Vindication. If you're going to get any games, they're 2 great ones. They really are.
Scythe, probably, because that's our biggest crossover.
It's our top crossover. It's both of our top 10s for 2 years in a row. There are some amazing games out there. Yes, I like the small box stuff, but my top 3 are all these big meaty things as well. There's a lot to go through. I haven't done the maths. I know we did last year about how many individual games there really are, but we've probably got 60 or probably 70 at least clear games, because we can't have had 30 crossovers.
I don't think so.
So 70 to 80 great games. They're in this top half for a reason. Rick made the joke about BGG top 10. A lot of these games are in the top 10, top 100, wherever they might sit, because we're not entirely wrong and we're not on our own with our opinions. These are great things. Go check them out. If you're a Ticket to Ride player, amazing. What was it? You're 12? Like, amazing.
Yes.
You can happily play those things forever. This isn't designed to make anybody go, oh, we need to play these big, heavy games. I've got no thanks. The smallest, cheapest, silliest game as my number 7, for goodness sake. Downforce is one of the best buys you can get. I promise you, you will love it. No matter how many people you play with, it's amazing. There's just such great titles out there, and we love talking about them. What are your favorite games? Stick them down in the comments. Do subscribe to this channel if you don't already, and hit the bell icon so you see all the other videos that I put out. And follow me on social media. Just search Win Some Lose More. You'll find me on all the usual platforms. For a second year in a row, thank you so much, Rick, for being with you. One day we'll get Mark with us. He was tempted, but he genuinely wasn't available. 3 loose, just to keep the pun getting more broken. No, but we'll see. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll see you again very soon. I'm Dieter. It's been Rick. You've been watching Win Some Lose More. Thank you.